into ESPN FC Live. We are with you 3 times a week. And don't forget, ESPN FC is with you daily. So make sure to always catch that on our YouTube channel and over on ESPN+. Janusz Michallik is alongside myself, Kay Murray, again for another Tuesday of action for you. And we'll also be hearing from one of our writers from ESPN, Ryan O'Hanlon, in just a moment as we focus on the Champions League, which is back right now for round 3. But Janusz, I want to start first with you by talking about transfers. As you can see up here, a couple of rumours from the rumour mill already. One of them, Jamal Musiala to Manchester City. What have you made of this?
Oh, that'd be great. All right. Anybody wants to play for Manchester City. I mean, I think Musiala would fit into just about any team, as I've said. I mean, although not the same, but similar to what Jude Bellingham can do, obviously. And we see what he's done at Real Madrid. Just look, I mean, a player with so much upside, obviously, great between the lines, can combine, which is important, of course, at Manchester City as well. Good with his ball at his feet, obviously, to take players on as well. So it makes sense. I mean, if you threw up his name for just about any team, I'd say, yeah, that makes sense. And Musiala would make your team better. However, I don't think it's going to happen because Pep wants Joshua Kimmich. And so there you have it. I mean, you can't get them both from Bayern. It's not going to let them go. So I think if you had a choice, and if Bayern at all will sell, as we know, it's a club that doesn't have to sell to anybody if they choose not to. I think Pep would take Kimmich before he takes Musiala.
The next one we want to talk to you about is Victor Osimhen to Chelsea. Now, obviously, there's a few teams in the market for a striker right now, but we keep seeing this one coming up. Maybe it could happen in January. Do you think this would be a good fit? Do you think it would be a good move for Victor?
This is no longer a rumor. This is a fact because I'm saying it, right? I mean, Chelsea need a striker, of course. We know Osimhen, they've been in the rumor mill for him. They've been in a rumor for just about any striker. Because their lack of scoring goals as well. And I can't think of any that are left out there, really, in terms of young players, that kind of investment. It's not going to be cheap. And, of course, who knows if De Laurentiis will let him go. But I just think that this is going to happen. Last-ditch effort from Chelsea because, I mean, who else are they going to get?
Well, yes, so obviously, and obviously we know everything that he did with Napoli and the goals that he scored. I wonder, though, if there's going to be a bit of competition for him, but you're saying it's a fact. So we'll say that you heard it here first. Janusz has gone out and said that this one is actually a fact. But just going back to Jamal Musiala very, very quickly, do you honestly think that Bayern would let him go? He's only 20.
Well, as I said, Bayern doesn't have to let anybody know. So my short answer to that, I just think, remember, when Pep was at Bayern Munich, I mean, he absolutely loved and adored Kimmich. And Kimmich hasn't been at his best, that's for sure. But I think what he does, we've seen Manchester City without Rodri in those 3 games. There's always an issue with that. But just his intelligence and ability at his best to play between the lines. And as we know, Pep will get the best out of any player, but it's easier to work with highly intelligent players in that system. So no, I don't think Bayern would let anybody go. If they don't want to let him go, they won't let him go. Same goes for Kimmich. But if there was a choice, I think Pep goes for Kimmich, and certainly Bayern Munich aren't going to let 2 players like that go.
No, and obviously there's been a lot of talk about what Kimmich's role is under Tuchel. So we'll see how that one plays out as well. All right, it is time to talk Champions League right now. And we will get to some of the desperate situations that some of the teams already find themselves in. But first, we'll talk the positive stuff. We'll welcome in right now Ryan O'Hanlon, one of our writers with ESPN to do. So, Ryan, thanks so much for being with us. Now, last time you were with us, we asked for your top 10 of the teams that we're seeing in the Champions League this season. I wonder if after the first 2 match days, anything has been revised from your part.
Yeah, you don't want to overreact too much. And I think I had Manchester City as number 1. So I think I probably would have had them as number 1, I don't know, for the past 5 seasons coming into the Champions League. After that, I think I would drop Bayern down a little bit. I think I would have Real Madrid and Barca maybe as a tier below City as the next favorites. Then I'd probably have Bayern in their own tier after that. Then I think after that, it's kind of a glut of teams like maybe PSG, Arsenal, and then I think Newcastle and Inter. I'm very curious about both of those teams, kind of as, they're not quite dark horses, but teams that have impressed me both in the Champions League and outside of it, especially. They've both been crushing teams domestically.
We know, Ryan, you've got a keen eye when it comes to analytics. You've written a book about this as well. How do you decide then on this? It's obviously a big part of it's going to be the fact that you're a fan and you're watching these games and you decide from what you've seen and you're watching them in league play as well. But is there anything analytical that you look at in terms of this?
Yeah, I mean, it's the analytics kind of are meant to be used over a longer period of time, right? So looking at something like expected goals from just 2 games in the Champions League can kind of lead you astray a lot of the time. And then you have the issue, right, of like, let's say Barcelona's expected goals numbers look great so far this season in the Champions League, but they're also in a really easy group, while a team like, Newcastle or Dortmund have actually not super impressive expected goals numbers, but they're, playing in the toughest group in the competition. So I think the best way to do it is you kind of try to take an amalgamation of what you're seeing in the Champions League, what you're seeing in the league, kind of add it together, add in a little mix of what you saw, what your expectations were coming into the season, and go from there. So yeah, I think the farther you get into the season, the more you can kind of rely on the data as telling you something useful projecting forward. But now I think it's a little kind of mix of art and science, I guess.
What do you think, Janusz, with Bayern Munich maybe losing a bit of their spot in the power rankings of Champions League favourites right now?
Well, they may. I just, mind because Ryan had him in the glut. I mean, you remember my lucky call last season, but I'm staying with it. I mean, Inter for me are one of the favorites to be in the final again. Nothing has changed. And, I don't know about analytics. All I know that Inter are a tournament team. It's the same team, very well organized. They don't care how they play, how they win. We see that historically, all the way back to Jose Mourinho, and even now as well. I look what they do right now. It doesn't seem to be a problem without Lukaku, because Lautaro Martinez is having an unbelievable season already. He did have a great partnership with Lautaro Martinez, Lukaku that is, but Marcus Thuram comes in, and everywhere else it's that midfield, even without Brozovic, is absolutely incredible because of Barella and Mkhitaryan and Çalhanoğlu, same players, Dumfries and DiMarco on the other side, the back three with Pavard, maybe arguably actually better in terms of going back to Bayern Munich. I always wait till February or March. On paper, this is a team that's capable. There are question marks about the relationship of Thomas Tuchel and Bayern players. That's the only thing that keeps me back from saying that Bayern, as always, are one of the favorites, because they, once you get there. With Inter, I suppose the one thing that, you look at schedule last season out of the group stages, they did have Porto and Benfica, which is not maybe the toughest route, but I think Man City, and I still like Inter very much. They'll get out of the group, no question in my mind. And after that, over 2 legs, boy, oh boy. I mean, I'd like to see teams that are going to easily get by them.
Now, the teams we've just been talking about are obviously in a much more favourable position than some, already coming into round 3 right now. Some desperate times for the likes of Manchester United, for Milan, for Borussia Dortmund, and pressure to get results right now. Who do you fear for right now, Ryan? Who needs to get what they need and 3 points on this round 3 of action?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Man U is the clear answer, given that they have 0 points through 2 games. They're currently 6 points back of the second spot in their group. But I almost feel less for them, just because I feel like, I don't know, with each game, they're grinding out a lot of results in the Premier League, but not playing in a particularly inspiring way. So I feel like, whether or not Man U gets out of the group, I don't really see them making a run if they do. While Milan, I think they like dominated Newcastle in the game that they drew 0-0, outshot them 25-6, 9 shots on target to Newcastle's 1. I think easily the best game anyone's played against Newcastle. The goals just didn't come, but they only got a draw out of that, and then they drew Dortmund. So to me, Milan has had kind of a weird season with a lot of good performances and then a lot of bad ones, including the game against Inter. But I think, to me, that they have a lot of potential to potentially upset a couple teams in the knockout round. But they've only gotten 1 point from performances that I think deserve more than 1 point. So to them, I guess in terms of feeling for a team, I would say them as a team that they need to sort of find a way to get their results to match their performances.
What about Borussia Dortmund then as well? Because obviously they've got to get some goals, Ryan.
Yeah, I sort of look like Dortmund just doesn't impress me. They need to turn it around, right? But I don't. With them, it's almost like they have a lot of the all the prospects that they usually have, but these prospects it's not the same level of talent that I think we're used to their young players having. So Dortmund need to turn it around, but to me, I look at Milan and they're almost more of a Dortmund team with all the young talent they have, and they've at least shown kind of the high gear of what it can be. While Dortmund, it's been quite poor through 2 games.
Yeah, obviously we're very much looking forward to see how things play out. Now we'll be at the halfway point in the group stages, and Ryan, we'd love to hear from you in a few more rounds, I'd say, just to get a better gauge of everything that's going on right now in the Champions League. But thanks so much for being with us. We'll talk to you again soon here on ESPN FC Live.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, Janusz, well, you might or may or not have noticed what I'm wearing on my top today. El Clasico is coming. We are upon the El Clasico. I'm saying El Clasico. El Clasico week is upon us, obviously. We're very excited about it. Now, this is very interesting this time around because it's at Montjuic. Obviously, Barcelona can't be playing at the Camp Nou, so that's interesting in itself. So rather than focus on just this match, because we're going to be doing that extensively on our YouTube channel, we decided to pick out some of the big topics and some of the good stuff historically with El Clasico. And I would like to ask you your top 3 players in El Clasico, not named Lionel Messi or Cristiano Ronaldo.
And this was a tough one, right? Because I try not to look necessarily at the statistic, who's got what in those games, although obviously at times you have to, but so many big names. Ronaldinho, of course, this is not the last time I'm going to talk about him, but Ronaldinho, of course, is one. Zinedine Zidane and Raul. And me, this is you against me in a way, because is it okay to say that you're a Real Madrid fan and I'm more of a Barcelona fan, but I respect for Real Madrid as well. But Raul has been absolutely outstanding, not just in El Clasico, but I remember the Champions League for Real Madrid as well. So I couldn't omit him, even though I had other Barcelona players, and not I wasn't even looking at the Xavis and Iniesta, but like Rivaldo is another one that I love. So I go way back. So it is for me Ronaldinho by far, Zinedine Zidane and Raul.
It's weird, isn't it? Because when I was thinking about this as well, and as obviously I worked for Real Madrid television for a number of years, and so I got to see so many Clásicos firsthand from the side of the pitch, and even beyond then, continuing to cover La Liga and being sent over from America. And it's funny what you said there about Xavi and Iniesta, because they were all part of those absolutely iconic teams that did have Messi and Ronaldo in them. And so it felt like so many of those players delivered in those matches that it's harder for them to stand out. Ronaldinho was the first name that came to mind for me, because to get a standing ovation at the Santiago Bernabeu, I mean, how can you not think of him first when it comes to Clasico history? But there's so many names. I know it was hard for you to even leave Benzema out, because as the years went on, he just became so key in Clásicos as well.
That was the dilemma. I was I bought into Karim Benzema for the longest time. I think it's crazy, because I appreciated him more when Cristiano Ronaldo was there, because he had to sacrifice so much, right? He was never, and then he became, in a short period of time, I don't want to say he became Ronaldo, but he became just as important to Ronaldo. So perhaps I should have squeezed him in there, but there was something in me that just couldn't get him over somebody like Ronaldo. And again, I wasn't looking strictly at the statistics of what happened in El Clasico. Perhaps I should, but I don't think that was directed from our wonderful producer. But so yeah, Benzema should have been there. But I've learned to appreciate and respect Karim Benzema through the years, because I've always felt, man, oh man, he's in service of Cristiano Ronaldo. He is so unselfish, or he was so unselfish in so many games, where later he proved that he could have done it all by himself, which he, by the way, did. That's why it's almost unfair to give it just 3, because there's so many great names.
I know it is, isn't it? That's what I was trying to think of. I was thinking, I thought about, I am allowed to say this, Ronaldo, Brazilian Ronaldo, in that epic season he had for Barcelona. I think he scored a winner in a Clasico as well. And then I thought of Gareth Bale, even in that Copa del Rey Clasico. That was such an iconic goal too. So I was thinking of it in terms of which players have really stood out, particularly in El Clasico, and obviously there's so many of them. And there have been so many Clasicos, and we don't have to go too far back because there have been some really memorable ones, even in the last 10 years. But if you are to pick out one that's most memorable to you, for whatever reason it might be, what would you go for?
You already mentioned it. I mean, it's Ronaldinho, 2005, November. You know that I remember a lot of things, but sometimes, the dates, the ages get away from me. But this one, I didn't even have to look up very much. I actually remember that. And you and I cover so many games that it's really difficult. Sometimes they blend. Which year was it? Who? And, Messi had some great games at the Bernabeu as well, or in Clásicos in general. But I just think that one was special. Even in the first half, I remember where Ronaldinho, did some things, but didn't do him great. But you could see that he was just getting going. And in the second half, I think I remember that game, even though I worked more as and I have to admit, a little bit more of a fan of Barcelona. And, Sergio Ramos in that game, and Salgado and Helguera, they all struggle. It's easy to pick on Sergio Ramos because I think in those two goals, he was just looking at the back of Ronaldinho for the most part. But even without scoring, he was absolutely breathtaking in that. And if you look at Ronaldinho and you think some of the greatest, just imagine what he would have been if you taken the game a little bit more serious, right? Come on, we're talking about Messi, we're talking about Ronaldo, Pele, some of the greatest in terms of pure technique and entertainment value. Ronaldinho is unmatched at times, even when you compare him to Ronaldo and Messi.
I know, it's funny, isn't it? So I started going back because we were asked about this, and we were told we were going to have to think of some of our most memorable Clásicos. My first ever Clásico was at the Bernabeu, and Ruud van Nistelrooy and Raúl scored in that game. It was 2-0. But that same season, when it went back to the Camp Nou, that was the Messi game. So sorry to mention his name, everybody, if we are supposed to be keeping Messi and Cristiano out of this one. That was the 3-3 at the Camp Nou. It was so iconic. And that was when I feel that Messi really said to the world, hello, I am Lionel Messi. And then there's a few others that I remember, like Julio Baptista scoring at the Camp Nou on Christmas. That was epic because Real Madrid didn't often win at the Camp Nou. I was there for Cristiano Ronaldo's Calma goal. But don't worry, Barcelona fans, because I also saw some huge Barcelona wins. Mourinho's first Clásico as Real Madrid coach at the Camp Nou. I was there working for Real Madrid TV. As you all know, it finished 5-0. And the best bit is, Janusz, it started raining and I didn't have an umbrella. So I sat at the side of the pitch knowing it was going to be a miserable night.
That's why you remember it.
And I was also there for the 6-2 at the Bernabeu, which was a massive Barcelona win as well. So I've definitely seen some of the iconic Clásicos in my time, and I cannot wait for this weekend's as well. There have been so many brilliant ones. And as you say, we can even remember many of them without Ronaldo and Messi. All right, it is time for PL Express. We have missed our PL Express with the international break coming, but we are back and we have lots to talk about as well. And there's a big managerial feel to today's PL Express as well. One of which is a rumour that we're seeing going around. So we're going to start there today, in that we're asking if Graham Potter to Manchester United would make sense. He's said to be in the picture for the United job if Erik ten Hag is sacked. Napoli are also said to be interested, but obviously we want to focus on it here because we know he has Premier League pedigree as a manager. What do you make of this talk?
Wow. He seems tainted to me. Not that I don't like second chances, because he deserves one. He's going to get one. But isn't that sort of the same story, right? When he came from, Brighton to Chelsea, that were a little bit in turmoil, not a little bit. In terms of ownership and number of players coming in and dealing with some big egos still. And you look at Manchester United, and it's a similar story. Manchester United, I don't want to say it's in turmoil, but to some degree, the ownership, the relationship between the fans and the Glazers and some of the big names still that exist there. So I just don't know that this is ideal for Graham Potter. Why would you leave Chelsea after that experience, taking some time off, and not think to say, you know what, when I do return, I want to make sure that at the very least I'm going to a team that's very organized, not under tremendous amount of pressure, where the expectations are going to be immediate, even though as a coach, I know that it's not going to be that easy. So I just think logically it doesn't make any sense for both Manchester United and, to be quite honest, for Graham Potter.
Okay, it's interesting, yeah, when I saw that, because what would be a good fit for Potter then if he was to come back to the Premier League as a manager, when you're talking about avoiding a club like that, like the Chelseas and the Manchester United?
Oh, now you put me on the spot. Never thought about it. It wasn't in the script.
Well, I know,
I
because I'm
don't see
thinking
it.
about it as you speak, because I'm thinking obviously there's no fear at the moment with the Newcastle job, but I'm thinking he'd probably be a good fit at a club like Newcastle. You know, when you're thinking about where he could fit, maybe the Spurs job before Ange Postecoglou got it. Obviously, there's no worries about that. They're like, what's a good place that he would land that would be somewhere where there maybe wouldn't be as much pressure as
Yeah, well,
Manchester United?
there isn't one at the moment, right? I mean, I mean, he obviously wants to play a proactive football, and I mean, if there's I have a feeling if there's going to be an opening, it's going to be a building job with less expectations. So the moment you start seeing maybe some teams looking over their shoulder towards relegation. By the way, I keep saying that, he keeps proving me wrong, but I believe, West Ham may be a team where, because David Moyes, I mean, you look at that West Ham dropping off, although he's done a tremendous job winning a trophy in Europe last season. I mean, they looked all right, but based on some results, they're kind of dropping in the table. But I think it's a team that's on the up, and I think if West Ham struggle and are at the wrong end of the table again, and if they decide that maybe we need something more expensive, because it's not that I'm against David Moyes, but I think people would agree with me that they're just waiting for that next step, for somebody a little bit younger with brighter ideas, committed to attacking football a little bit more. I could see that in time, that would be a good spot for Potter.
Okay, well, we'll keep our eye on it. Obviously, the managerial merry-go-round always goes on. Speaking of which, we're also seeing a lot of talk of, if Pep Guardiola is to leave Manchester City, Roberto De Zerbi being the man who would come in and be the perfect fit at Manchester City if Pep were to go. Do you think he actually would be the best fit?
I thought we started this rumor a couple of weeks ago. That's the only place for
Obviously, we
Deserbi
start
to
all the
go.
rumors in the football world, like
Yes,
the
I
Daily
thought
Express.
I thought again this was more of a fact. Look, I mean, it's all about timing. If Pep Guardiola decided to leave at the end of next season, done and dusted. There really isn't anybody else. Not just because they like each other, but and respect each other and play similar football. But I think, like Pep, De Zerbi is the only one that, in my mind, is as innovative as Pep, if you know what I mean. He's not afraid to take risks, and he's not afraid to try different things, and challenging players to put them in difficult situations, in new positions, and making them believe that they actually can play great. Because, if all of a sudden you go, okay, Bernardo Silva may not be a great example when Pep put him at a left back in the Champions League game. But if he continued with that, I am sure Bernardo Silva would have played well, even though initially would say, come on, boss, that's not a place for me. De Zerbi is the same sort of a manager that would, I think, find different ways to have players as individuals and team to go to the next level. So that's why I think these two are being put together, because I can't think of anyone else right now that could come close to Pep Guardiola, because it's going to be a void. It's going to be a same void for Manchester City as Sir Alex Ferguson was for Manchester United, as Arsene Wenger was for Arsenal, and then we can probably think of a couple of different managers around Europe. So it absolutely makes sense, but the timing.
Yeah, obviously, it is the time. Do you know what else you could add to that list that I feel De Zerbi definitely has? That intensity, and so demanding as well. He feels like that kind of football obsessive that Pep Guardiola is too. And I feel like they're going to need that, because otherwise it might be too much of a drop off, right? Okay, let's talk about the top two of the top two teams in the Premier League right now. They are the only two unbeaten teams in the Premier League right now, and they are both the North London teams as well, in Arsenal and Spurs. But who do you think has been the better of the two so far?
I mean, you have to say Spurs, because it was so unexpected when a new manager coming in like that. Look, I mean, I think Arsenal has done a tremendous job. Just getting over Manchester City was tremendous. By the way, that game against Chelsea, even they were totally outplayed and actually outcoached, because I think Poch outcoached Mikel Arteta in this game. But there's a lot to be said about them coming back in a game like this, because last season they've done that a little bit, but it wasn't so long ago where nobody would give Arteta or Arsenal in general a chance to play as bad as they did, lose as late as they were against Chelsea, who were, in my opinion, totally dominated. If it wasn't for a gift from Sanchez, Arsenal lose that game. So there's a lot to be said about Arsenal coming back in this game, but it's kind of hard to go against Ange Postecoglou and Spurs because, they're top of the league. They've played some tough games and they've gotten the results. It kind of would be easy for me to say, well, look at James Maddison, which, by the way, has changed this team going forward. The idea of playing the way the fans want him to play, the way the players like Son want to play. And it's easy to go James Maddison and all the goals, and they're missing Harry Kane. And look, they're scoring in so many different ways. But I think it's defensively what he's done with this team that's even more impressive because they are the second best defensive team. Well, City 7, they have 8. I think there's another team that conceded 8. But look at Vicario. The Google probably went down the moment Vicario came to London, right? Because nobody really paid attention to where he was playing, what sort of a goalkeeper he was. And then today, when we're talking about Robert Sanchez being terrible, Raya at Arsenal, my goodness, was that a good idea? Onana at Manchester United, the ball-playing goalkeepers. Here you have Vicario, who's excellent. The back four, Mickey van de Ven. Show me a better center back right now. Top 3 in the Premier League easily, the way he's played so far. I look at Udogi. His upside and his ceiling. Where is it right now? Another player that came from a modest side in Serie A that's just playing better and better every game. I think Romero, we don't have to talk much about him because he is world class. But even the young midfield, in Zard, the way he plays, and Bissouma, he was suspended, but obviously has found his feet after a year of being there. So it's hard not to say that it's Spurs at the moment. Now, the difference is going to be staying power.
That's what I was going to ask you. Do you think they can keep it up?
Well, that's just it. If you ask me that, then I think Arsenal obviously haven't gone through a season where they push Manchester City to a limit right now. What I just said, the way they've dealt with that Chelsea game, where it was maybe the worst Arsenal we've seen in I don't know how long, they found a way, which is very, very important. They're tested. They've gone through all the emotions with Mikel Arteta when he started, when they finished in 8th place 2 years in a row, when we almost fired Mikel Arteta with everybody else, to kind of finishing 5th, and now last season, and a great start to this season, it has to be said. Longer term, I go with Arsenal. But at the moment, I don't want to take it from... I could easily have made a case for Arsenal, even though Spurs are first. But I don't have the heart to take it away from Spurs. Why? They're top of the league for now a while.
Oh, well, we put out a poll actually on ESPN FC. Tens of thousands have voted already on this one to ask who you would rather play under. Would it be Ange Postecoglou or would it be Mikel Arteta? So here are the results so far. 55% of you would rather play under Big Ange, 45% under Arteta. What about you though, Janusz, and why?
Look, Ange seems like a great guy, but I think he doesn't suffer fools easily, right? But behind that smile, there's sternness. It's not easy. So is Mikel Arteta. I think the longevity of that process for Mikel Arteta, and again, soft spot for Ange for a long time, soft spot for Australians in general. So I think my first instinct was Ange, but I just have a feeling. Just watching Mikel Arteta, seeing what he's taken on for Pep Guardiola, seeing how he's moving this team right now, seeing how he's built a very, very young team on the back of a legend that was Arsene Wenger. Just slightly, I have to agree with the poll, but just. Okay. Maybe we'll revisit that one because we know that maybe you could change your mind as the season goes on. But I can see why you would pick Arteta here, especially with your admiration for Pep and obviously what he can emulate from that coach.
Okay, this is never a nice one to do, but we have to do it. We'll start with the nice part of it. Biggest surprise of the season for you so far. You know what's coming after that as well, don't you?
Yes. Biggest surprise. I mean, that could be positive, right? I mean, I have to talk about James Madison. I mean, I knew how good he was. Initially I was shocked where he ended up because I think there was a need for him, saying, Manchester United, even Liverpool. If you watch Liverpool against Everton, I mean, that lack of creativity still exists. I know that Jurgen Klopp loves the great engine room, and he's wanted without that type of player per se. But I think what James Madison's doing immediately, I mean, he's one of the big, other than defense, he's the reason why we're not really thinking about Harry Kane, right? Not just the pure numbers, but that creativity that was missing while Conte was there and Mourinho. So even though I admire him as a player, I mean, from the off, he's turned around the team. I mean, he really, as much as you want to talk about Ange, I think you have to talk about James Madison. And I just didn't think that he was going to have such an impact immediately, where you can see his footprints on every play. And we saw in the last game. I mean, I can't think of a game where there wasn't 2 or 3 or 4 plays where it just clicks, that transition, the link between the back and the front. Absolutely tremendous.
Yeah, you could quite literally put Spurs overall in that whole department, right, for the biggest surprise of the season so far. And
the only crazier part is people I see in the English-speaking media, and I'm going to throw this in because it's in my head, is, I've listened to some respectable people thinking that they are better without Harry Kane, which is absolutely, I mean, just imagine Harry Kane in that team with James Madison on top of that, right? I mean, think about, I know that maybe, without the money for Harry Kane, they wouldn't have been able to, but just assuming that it was possible, I see a lot of people thinking that they are better without Harry Kane. I think they're
not with that.
bonkers.
But then on the other side of it, maybe it's been something that Ange can use to say, let's prove that we can do this, that has given them that challenge, if you know what I mean. That still played into the story of this season so far. That other people are trying to step up and prove themselves in his absence.
Oh, I think he can say that to the players, but privately he probably going, yeah.
I wish I had him.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah, who wouldn't want Harry Kane in their side?
Richarlison had a couple of chances that Harry Kane puts away eyes closed, right? I mean, like massive chance. No, I mean, of course you would have loved to have them both.
Well, they don't need to worry just yet. Anyway, that's for sure. Not where they are in the table. But let's talk about the biggest letdown of the season for you so far in the Premier League.
Marcus Rashford, and it's probably not even close. And I don't enjoy saying that. Remember, like you probably remember a month ago, we were talking about it. If you put Marcus Rashford on some big teams, could it, like Barcelona, Real Madrid, he would be fine, right? But that's also his undoing, in my opinion, right? Because he needs a special. It seems to me that he needs a special environment in order to be good. We all know that he's been extremely inconsistent, but when things are going well, like last season, to a degree, when Erik ten Hag came over and turned things around, he was thriving. And now, I don't know if it's soft mentality. I don't know where it is, but I expect him with the talent that he has. I think he's a great player, but maybe I should say he's a very good player, because in order to be great, you have to have the ability to carry the team when things aren't going very well. And there is some softness in mentality wherever it is in his case, because I look at him from game to game. He's, by the way, not the only one on that team. You look at Manchester United, and McTominay leads the team in scoring with 3, and I don't know who's even second. I can't even think of it. Eriksen has 1 goal and Bruno has 2 goals. I mean, I could have a go at him a little bit, but I think he's doing much better job than Rashford. So Marcus Rashford, incredibly disappointing.
And if you do become a product of what's around you, though, I mean, isn't he part of the reason they were doing well last season? Wasn't he leading that, and it wasn't just what was around him?
Yes, of course. Yeah, you can spin that. I mean, there's always 2 sides of the story, of course. But do we not think that I mean, how many goals does he have in the Premier League? Right? Do we not think that he should be doing much better? Look, not to say he's not a very good player, but when you look at last season and this season, the biggest so far. It's only 9 games in. I had to pick somebody.
Yeah, you do. Wonder what Graham Potter thinks about it all. Wonder if he's watching all this. Wondering if he could do something there. Anyway, thanks so much for being with us for the latest edition of ESPN FC Live. It's always great to have you for PL Express as well. Make sure to continue watching our channel for all the latest from world football and all the latest build up to El Clasico as well. See you soon.